Hello, this is Mr. Barr. I just wanted to take a quick moment to run you through my slide deck here for my ACT prep class. Unfortunately, I think because of the pandemic, we won't be able to get together much and actually have an ACT prep session like I did last year. But I still want to make sure I provided you with the resources that you needed in case you're taking the ACT. So please, I can't stress this enough. Feel free to reach out to me if you want a packet, if you want anything. Talk to me, get one of the guidance counselors on it. They can get a hold of me, and I'll be happy to get you whatever practice tests, the packet that I hand out, whatever you want. I can get it to you. In addition to this video, on the front of this page here, you'll see my website bit.ly/bar social studies. That will take you. That'll get you all these resources as well. So they're online if you want them as well. So feel free to go there and check those out. All right, let's talk about general preparation for this test. Okay, so there's some things you need to do to prepare. First off, you're going to want to get your stuff ready the night before. If you're that type of person, and I know it, I get it, that if you're the type of person that just kind of wakes up, rolls out of bed, and goes to school, you're not going to want to do that here. You're going to want to make sure that you are prepared the night before. So you're going to want to get your stuff ready as much as you can the night before. You're going to need to have picture ID, your ticket, which should be online, which you need to print off and bring with you, and then your pencil and your calculator. You don't want to get here and then all of a sudden realize you need something. Okay, have all that stuff ready to go. Change your normal routine. If your normal MO is just to roll out of bed, you can't do it this time. You got to do something different. Okay? Eat a smart breakfast. Avoid junk food. I love donuts. I love that stuff in the morning too, but avoid junk food. Okay? Don't cram down the coffee or the caffeine to stay awake. Avoid junk food if you can. Eat a smart breakfast, fruit, something healthy so that it can get your brain going. Okay? Do some practice questions. If you get a practice test from me, do a 5-minute drill. Take 5 minutes and run through some. Bring smart snacks in a water bottle. You can eat during break. Okay, so bring some grapes, some raisins, something with good that'll give you energy during the test. Same thing with water. Stay hydrated. Okay, don't bring pop. You don't want to drink too much because you don't have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the test. But at the same time, you still need to stay hydrated. Okay. Big thing too, get here on time. If you're taking the test in the winter, especially Iowa in the winter can have unpredictable weather. You don't want to get stuck on the roads and be late because you didn't leave in time. Give yourself plenty of time to get here. The other big thing with the ACT is that it has a lot to do with your attitude. Your attitude determines your altitude, I think, on this test. Okay, so you got to develop a positive mental attitude. Understand something. The national average for the ACT is 20.6. The Iowa average is 21.7. So it's that some get more, some get a little bit less than that, but those are the averages. So it's not like you got to get a 35 here to be stellar. Okay, 35 is awesome. If you get a 35, that's great. But you got to understand, this is a test. All right, you can do this. You're smarter than you think you are, and you're more capable than you realize. And then keep the test in perspective. Understand that it's one test in one day. It's not a snapshot over the course of a semester like a grade is. It's just a test. That's it. Okay, so it doesn't, yes, colleges look at it, they pay attention to it, it matters, but it's not the be all end all for you. Don't let the test define who you are, and don't let your score determine your attitude. Your attitude determines your altitude. And then finally, get as much sleep as you can the night before. I can't stress this enough. I know you're busy. I know you got sports and you might have basketball or volleyball or football till the night before the test. I get that, but get as much sleep as you can. Get off your phone and go to bed. All right, let's talk about the test itself. So there's 4 sections on the ACT. English is 45 minutes and 75 questions. Math is 60 minutes and 60 questions. Reading is 35 minutes and 40 questions. And science is 35 minutes and 40 questions. So English, math, reading, science, in that order. I get a lot of questions about how is it scored. So let's talk about the different scores you'll get. A composite score is the average of the 4 sections. So they're going to add up your score on 4 sections, divide by 4, and that's your score. That's your composite. That's what goes to the colleges. That's what matters. Okay, your scale score is your score for that section. So in reading, you got this. In math, you got this. In science, you got this. And in English, you got this. Your raw score is the number of correct answers, okay? And I'll say this for the first of many times in this presentation. You don't get punished for wrong answers. You don't want to do that. You don't get hurt if you get something wrong. Take a shot. Get as many points as you can. All right. Your raw score is the number of correct answers on the test. And then your sub scores are the number of questions right in each category on that test. So for example, in math, there's a certain number of algebra questions and a certain number of geometry questions. So in that case, whatever you got in those individual sections, that would be your sub score. All right, so everybody wants to know, how do I get a good score? What do I do? Okay, so here's some good advice. Number one, you've got to have that positive growth mindset. You can get a good score. You got to believe that you can. Okay, second, you want to maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. Okay, there's going to be stuff on this test that you don't know how to do. For example, on the math test, if you've never taken trigonometry before, you're not going to know how to do that. Don't worry about that. Understand that going in. Do the stuff you know how to do and do it well. Set a target for the number of correct answers. In your packet, you're going to get a chart from me, and it's going to have the score that you want to get. So if you want to get a 30 on math, then it's going to tell you how many questions you need to get right to get that score. So shoot for that number. Say, hey, I got to find 30 things on here that I know how to do. All right, don't worry about the stuff you don't know how to do. Find 30 things you know how to do for sure. Okay? Train your brain to take this test differently from other tests. Okay, this isn't like school. If you take a test in government with me, I'm going to deduct points for what you get wrong and give you points for what you get right. Here, they don't deduct points for what you get wrong. They don't really care what you get wrong. They care about what you get right and what you know. Find the stuff that you know how to do and do it well. You take this test much differently than you do other tests. So you got to shift your brain and shift your thinking a little bit. And then finally, employ successful strategies. Use these things that work and that are proven. Okay? I'm going to give you one big general strategy, and it's going to apply to all the tests. Okay? And then I'll dive into each individual test with you. The biggest strategy that I can give you, and this saved my life. I got a 21 the first time I took it, and the second time I took it, I got a 33. And it wasn't because I got smarter. It was because I used better strategies. I didn't even finish the first time. Okay? So you've got to answer questions using POOD, and it's going to sound weird, but it's personal order of difficulty. What that means is that you don't work the ACT in the order it provides because that's the order. Instead, find your personal degree of difficulty. Find what works for you. Okay? Put questions into 3 categories. Now, later, and never. Now questions are ones that you can do now. Later are ones that you can do but it'll take more time. And never, you use the letters of the day to answer. Okay, so now you're going to look at a question. Say, bam, I can do it now. Do it now and get it done. Later, hey, I'm going to mark that. I'm going to come back to it. Never is one of those questions that maybe you just have no idea how to do. In that case, you pick 2 letters because the test goes A, B, C, D, E, and then F, G, H, I, J. So you're going to need to pick 2 letters, and then that's always the letters that you pick. Okay, so if it's A and J, then those are always the 2 letters that you pick. If you guess, if you're going to guess, pick the same letters every time. Okay? All right, let's talk about the English test. This is in the order that you'll take it, so you'll always take English first. You're going to get 45 minutes for 75 questions. Okay, it's going to be 35 questions on what they call rhetorical skills, and then 40 questions are like usage and mechanics, the grammar stuff. You're basically going to get 5 essays or passages, and each of them is going to be followed by a set of multiple choice questions. Some are going to focus on an underlined portion, some are just going to focus on a section of the passage, and some are going to focus on the passage as a whole. It just depends on the question. Okay? So let's look at some tips for the English test. Use that POOD strategy. Be aware of the writing style in each passage. That does matter, okay? Examine the underlined portions of the passage. Really look heavy at those. Note the difference in choices. Sometimes that difference is just slightly different, okay? And it means something just a little bit different. So really pay attention to those choices. 36 seconds per question. You got to make your now, later, and never decisions very quickly because you don't have time. You can't sit there and look at it for a minute and then make a choice. You got to look at it, now, later, never, and then move on. And most of all, finish the test. You don't get deducted points if you get one wrong. You only get marked for what you get right. Okay, finish the test. Take a shot. Give yourself the best chance that you can. All right, everybody's favorite is math. Everybody puts so much stock in math. It's everybody's, like, a lot of people's least favorite section. And I don't know why, because it's one of 4 sections. It doesn't matter any more than English, reading, and science does. It might if you're going into a certain math field, I get that. And there's things you can do to increase your math score. But if you've got a 30 in reading, a 29 in English, a 31 in science, and a 22 in math, so you could do really well and the other three do not so good in math, you're still going to get a 28 composite. That's pretty good, okay? That's well above the national average. So it's still one of 4 tests, all right? So it doesn't weight any more than the other ones do, okay? All right, so for the math test, you get 60 minutes for 60 questions. Higher math is 57 to 60%. Skills are 40 to 43%. Pre-algebra and elementary algebra, that's 24 questions. Algebra and coordinate geometry are 18 questions. Plane geometry and trig is 18 questions. Important though, the test does get harder as you go through each section, which means that you're going to have more of your later and never questions at the end of the test. Okay, so your later and never questions are going to come toward the end of the test, more than likely. Tips for the math test. Okay, time is your enemy. Use that POOD strategy. Okay, pace yourself. Really be aware of the time. Okay, answer all the questions. You don't have to show your work. They don't care what you get wrong. Find what you can do right. Okay, use your calculator wisely. Don't use it on every problem. It takes more time away. You don't have a lot of time. That's 60 questions in 60 minutes. That's a minute a question. Sometimes it takes me a minute to read the question. Okay, so you really got to move. Accept that there's going to be some that you cannot finish. And some of you, that's going to be really hard because that's a big shift in your mindset. Okay, at school, it's all about I have to finish, and it is here too, okay? But you have to accept that there's stuff on here that you don't know how to do. So finish it, still do it, okay? But use your letter of the day. Don't just leave it blank, all right? You can't do that. All right, let's take a look at the reading test. The reading test is 35 minutes and 40 questions. There's 4 categories: social studies and natural science, booyah, 20 questions. Arts and literature, 20 questions. So that's how they're broken up. And then each passage is roughly 800 to 850 words and has 10 questions associated with it. Okay. General pacing guide for the reading test, kind of just the suggested point of where you should be. The first passage should take you about 11 minutes. The second one about 10. The third one about 8. And the fourth one about 6. All right, use POOD. So tips for the reading test is to use POOD. Use the questions to help you read. Read only if you have to. Skim. Okay, skimming is a good skill. All right, time is not your friend. You don't have to be an expert on the subject. You're not going to take a test on some natural science passage. Okay, you just have to be able to do it for the ACT. You don't have to be an expert on it. So read only if you have to. Skim if you can. Okay. All right, science. Last category here, and then I got some final takeaways for you. 35 minutes and 40 questions. 15 charts and graphs, which is called data representation. 18 experiments, which are like research studies, and then 7 conflicting viewpoints. So science is this, and you look at methodology and research and how they got to their conclusions. Important here, the test does get harder as you go through. So again, with science and math, the later and the never questions are going to be much farther in the test than not. All right, tips for science. It's not science like you think of it. It's not chemistry and biology where you're mixing chemicals and things like that. It's all about charts and data, okay? So that you got to shift your mindset there. Use that POOD strategy. Time is your enemy. You don't have a lot of it, so move quickly. Now, later, never decisions have to be made quick. Read only if you have to, again, skim, and use the passage to help you answer the question. Sometimes it can help you, okay? All right. I kind of whipped through that pretty fast, but again, if you have more distinct questions, let me know. And again, these aren't strategies that I just made up. I got them out of an ACT prep class that I took in a book that I read, that I used. If you go get an ACT book, you'll find this stuff in there. It's not a secret. I don't claim to have all the answers, but these strategies have worked for me. So some final takeaways. Use that personal order of difficulty. You've really got to practice that strategy. And if you come get packets from me, then practice it. Come in after school and say, Mr. Barr, can I take this practice test with you? Yeah, sure. I'll sit down with you and I'll give you 30 minutes for the math test and we'll project your score out and see where you're at. That's fine. I'll be happy to do that. But let's practice that strategy, okay? You got to label your questions now, later, and never, and then use the letters of the day on the never question. So if you're going to guess, pick 2 letters, and those are always the letters you guess with. Maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. Find the stuff you do and do that really well. Don't worry about what you don't do well, okay? Answer every single question. Don't leave one blank, okay? I can't emphasize that enough. Your final score is an average, so the more points you can get, the higher your average will be. So give yourself a chance. And then positive thoughts. You can do this. You can do well on this test. It doesn't mean anything if you do bad. You can take it again. I get you want to do a good job. I'm sure you do. And it's disappointing if you don't. I understand that. But at the same time, you cannot let it define you, okay? It has to be, you got to keep perspective on it. Finally, I just want to close with this quote. You're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. From one of my favorite philosophers, the great Winnie the Pooh. All right. And all those things are true. Braver, stronger, and smarter. So as you approach the ACT, remember, you are braver, stronger, and smarter, and your attitude determines your altitude. Thanks for listening.